Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Ben, and everyone who organized the conference. It's a delight to be here. Marshall McLuhan said that the medium is the massage. I say that it is the media which presents the narrative, which is our message for humanity. I don't know how to use a slide projector, so in my little narrative now, I'm just going to ask the audience if someone could help me. The PowerPoint.
Oh, just push the arrow. Okay.
This one here? I feel so sunken and shallow back here. Can you see me? It's dark and closed. Legend has it that around 142 AD, there was a person who lived in the mountains on an island in China. And the mountains were comprised of the most pure emerald stone and reached 100,000 feet into the sky. This person was an alchemist. He was a Taoist. And he is known to be the father of alchemy and the father of protoscience. Wai Po Yang was the individual who created the idea for the pill of immortality. And legend also has it that he fed it to his dog first, and then he fed it to himself and to his disciples. No one knows if he ever lived long or what happened after he slipped away into the night. But we know today that a pill for immortality is a big wish, and it's one that we may not want. I mean, for goodness sake, who wants to be immortal? I'd rather have super longevity and choose how I die, and if I come back, or transform, or transmutate into another matter. How that could be, rather than to be imprisoned like a character in a Jean-Paul Sartre play, no exit, not able to get out. And I think this is one of the most important narratives of super longevity, of the idea of immortality. It's not a prison to be encapsulated inside. It's an idea about expanding life and extending life onto different types of platforms and substrates. Approximately 2,000 years after Wai Po Yang worked on the pill of immortality, in Russia there was another individual who's a philosopher. His name was Nikolai Furov, and he had the idea that we need to unlearn and learn what we learn through science, that there is no absolutes in science, that it's important for us to consider our unknowing as much as our knowing. He also had a tremendous passion for the role and the aim or the goal of humans, and that is to bring people back from the dead. He was so enormously impassioned by this, it became a salvo for him. Around the same time in France, there was a gentleman by the name of Jean Finot, who wrote about the idea that we could engineer our biology, that through a system of reductionism, we could go down into the cell and understand its engineering qualities. And perhaps through chemistry, we could build new types of humans and extend life, maybe not indefinitely in his terms, but certainly through a type of chemistry and new types of media, not yet understood. But indeed, his passion was about the issue of developing new types of systems, new types of substrates, new types of platforms for new types of humans. And that brings me to my talk, which is life expansion. My own history is in looking at the human form from the arts background, and what Pico de Melgueira said, that the human form is the most beautiful form as far as aesthetics and functionality is concerned. Well, we still look at the human form as this type of figure, but it's time we look beyond the form and start thinking about the essence and the quintessence of the human. So life, what is it? What is this thing we're trying to extend through transhumanism, through life extension, through regenerative medicine, through all types of genetic engineering and nanomedicine, and the different tools that we talk about when we talk about life extension? What is this life? Who are you, and why do you want to exist and live indefinitely? Certainly there's a number of different philosophical, metaphysical, and spiritual understandings. But for me, it's a matter of I'm alive right now, and this is all I know. And every emotion and feeling I go through from moment to moment is a connection of dots, if you will, or different instances where I experience the world as it experiences me. The matter and the psyche is very important into the transmutations, or what I call the transbiosymbiosis, borrowed from Lynn Margulis about the bacteria creating the human early on. Well, we talk about cells dividing, where you have a cell through mitosis divides and creates two daughter cells. And this is how we keep on extending and living and forming new cells for our existence. And certainly there is a theory about a limit on this, the Hayflick limit of aging, where the cell only can divide so many times before it dies off. But we also need to think about the division in our thinking, where fields become interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, and transdisciplinary, so that we can look across borders, so across boundaries, at where we're going in our work, in our specific fields. And in doing this, we go back to the ideas of the Protoscience, and the ideas of Fedorov, and the ideas of Finot, talking about ideas not being stationary, that they have to transmutate into new ideas as we have new experiences and we develop new materials and new media. Well, life expansion, what is it? It's a term I used, it's been used by others, of course, but in my estimation, it has specifically to do with the length of time a person is alive and the diversity of matter that a person exists within. That's a very materialistic view of life expansion, but that's one we need because we are in the material world at this moment. So when I look at life expansion, I consider for the human life, we have a single century that we know of is possible for us. But if we extend that beyond the century, what type of systems and what type of forms could we live within? And how does that affect this idea of life expansion? What core elements of life are to be expanded, and what type of matter might we live within? And I think that's the $100 million question when we consider the different material, the different media for life expansion. We have our reality, we have our perceptions, we have our experience, we have our sense of identity and self. And these are the elements of what causes the experience in the moment-to-moment existence that we have. There's also the idea of this psyche, of what is this moment that we are? Is it a self? Is it identity? Is it psyche? I have to revert here to Aristotle's book, De Anima. It's a delightful book to read. I think it's quite important, and I'm deeply saddened that the Western world interpreted it to mean on the soul rather than on the psyche, because Aristotle did not mean on the soul, he meant on the psyche, on the thing called life. And I think it's very important to think about the cause and the source of this the living agency, the living experience, and what it is when we try to duplicate it or prolong it or enhance it and include it into different time frames of existence. That brings me to Lynn Margulis, who I find is a fascinating author and someone who just passed away recently, unfortunately. But in her work as a biologist and looking at what makes life, and in her book, What is Life?, she refers to the idea of bacteria coming together as a conglomeration, that not only are we comprised of the DNA of the human as well as the DNA of mitochondria, we're also comprised of the different elements of bacteria from early on, and that conglomeration sends a message to us that I think is very important. We're not just one being, we're a multiplicity, a plurality of beings all at once together. So when we talk about the media, I look at it from the perspective of the media arts and design, and I have to revert here also to Norbert Weiner and the idea of cybernetics, and then to second-order cybernetics, and taking a look at the human-machine interface and how that started this cyborg concept. Not the cyborg of Donna Haraway or Kevin Warwick, but the cyborg of Manfred Klein, who looked at the human as transforming into a new type of body, a new type of presence that could exist in a different type of environment. That environment being space exploration, which is a really delightful concept, so that we would have to evolve to exist in another type of biosphere, that being space exploration, space travel. Well, the human-computer interface started developing a lot of different works in wearable technology and wearable art, and there's a tremendous field there with robotics, AI, different types of augmentations, appendages to the body for communications mostly, not that much for prosthetics, although prosthetics is coming on in the arts very strongly and looking at new ways to enhance our perceptions and our abilities within virtuality, digitality, and one area that I find most fascinating is immersive design or experience design. The medias here which are coming together within the arts and design as nanotechnology, artificial intelligence, and biotechnology. We have the fields called biological art, or now called bioart, which is a very interesting way of looking at organisms and manipulating organisms through genetic engineering and cloning, etc. And also nanomedicine is being explored at the University of California to a very mild degree. But what's more interesting here is that when we put these media together, they form something else that is yet to be explored more deeply and yet to be presented as a field within the media arts. And that brings us to brain-computer interaction, especially the work by Von Forster at the University of Illinois many years ago, is a very first step in taking a look at that, which brings us back around to the issue of whole brain emulation, which we will hear about more, and the idea of distributed identity, which is a phrase that I use to counter Anne Catherine Hill's idea of the post-human as being a separation of the body and a disrespect for the body. I think that the body is the vehicle that we exist in, and in the arts and media design, it's a very important field of study and awareness to explore within and around. But certainly it must be considered an essential aspect of whatever platform we're going to exist within, because existence does have some level of organization, and that's what makes the species and the organism, as well as communication. I've shown this many times in my talks, and I thought I would bring it here briefly to show how the media can be looked at in life expansion. This is one of the versions of Primo Posthuman that I designed in 1997. This is just an illustrative concept of the biotechnogenesis, perception of how the body can be a body but not a body at the same time. It can be just similar to your computer, for example. It could be just a device within which you communicate through. And the body could be one that exists in any type of reality, real-time, virtual time, digital time, synthetic existence, etc. But the important aspect here in my research is looking at what aspects of the body can be reproduced and in what type of media, through what type of medium. So it is that combination of that transdisciplinarity of the fields within the sciences and the arts and the technologies that look at that second-order cybernetic approach to it, where the user is part of the system, not just the observer. And I think that's very important when we start looking at this experience design. But one of the issues that I run into nonstop is the pausing to go, the interesting aspect of the dogma, a term used today quite often, but the dogma within academics and education where you can only go so far but not any further. Here's a digital design, one of the avatars of Elif Rudaf, who's in Turkey, a professor of design at the university. Well, Elif Ayater looks at the avatar as being multiple personas of her own self. She has many of them. I think there's between 6 and 12 different characters who do their own design of different avatars, and each one has a different personality, a different sense of being, and she allows them to make friends and even disagree with her. So it's a very interesting, complex situation where if we multiply ourselves in diverse bodies and in diverse environments, how will we get along with the different aspects of ourselves? So I think that here's where we need to pause and consider what the concerns and consequences are of these approaches and attention to dealing with new types of media for building the message of life expansion beyond the biological form, beyond being tethered to biology, and maybe even perhaps handicapped by biology when we look at expanding ourselves into new mediums and into new types of human beings. So I have the terms here. I think it's transdisciplinary and transmodernism as an answer to the postmodernist anger and resentment towards the Enlightenment and modernism. I think that postmodernism has made some very good strides in breaking through the hardcore absolute truth and individual world and lack of plurality, let's say. But I think that it's very important to come up with a new way of looking at this, and I hope it's one that we can develop together. We're beyond the postmodernist era. It's time to put that to rest and start looking at how we can use rationale again, how we can use reason, and how we can use aspects of scientific realism along with constructivism to build a more interesting future for ourselves. So the predicament is not that we don't have the tools and not that we don't have the intelligence and all the capability to envision a future for ourselves as transhumanists and enthusiasts of consciousness raising and exploring consciousness and exploring different technologies and sciences. But the issue is the level at which we want to live and how we want to enhance ourselves, and to agree to disagree and agree to allow each other the freedom and the right to choose which way we have to go. So herein, for human enhancement, the control factor is to stay alive. One way we can do this is by changing what is considered as the normal human condition. For those opposed to enhancement, the control factor is to die. One way they can do this is to restrain our condition by keeping disease alive. And I think this is a very important issue for us to consider because the debate will only grow larger and stronger. I mentioned politics in one of my questions to one of the sessions, the morning session. And I only mention it because I've been getting phone calls recently from a number of different bureaus. I'm not into politics. I don't even like politics. I did run for office once, and I was elected in Los Angeles. I was elected councilperson for the 28th Senatorial District in Los Angeles, which is Santa Monica, part of Malibu, down to Redondo Beach. And I resigned after a year, after I met my husband. I think he forced me to. But I was elected to the Green Party. And I had a TV show, and I talked about the future. I talked about problem solving. And I wasn't a green environmentalist, but I was very involved in the environment for many years, living in Telluride, Colorado, and in the Amazon jungle, and hiking through volcanoes, and spending a tremendous amount of time out at sea, just exploring the relationship between the human and the environment. I thought the Green Party was an answer for me. My platform was technology and the transhuman. I wrote the Transhuman Manifesto in 1983 before transhumanism developed into a movement, before I knew very many people in the room today. The reason I came up with it is I heard the term, and I had just gone through the death of pregnancy and almost myself, and I was looking for ways to resolve this issue of disease and death and dying. And it was very important to me at that time. One thing led to another, and here I am back, full circle to this issue of politics. Well, we live in a world where politics are important. We say we have freedom of the internet. We say we have freedom to do as we choose with our bodies, our minds, our spirits, our psyche. But do we really? No one knows for sure. And I think that as long as we live in a world where there are particular dictums of what we're supposed to be, what is normal, what is normalcy, we must fight against it. The idea of there being a man and a woman as separate genders that are not interchangeable, the idea that you have one sex and forever one sex and that is it, is outrageous to me. The fact that you are one identity for a lifetime seems totally absurd. The fact that you are to have one marriage, one job, one career, one place to live, seems so silly to us in the 21st century, yet it is the largest portion of the world that lives like that. And we are a very little minority, and mind you, we are not elitists. So don't let anyone fool you by telling you that we are not. We're simply people who have a passion for life and a passion for questioning and answering. And there I return to the issue of Fanon and the issue of Fedorov, who talked about questioning what it is that we know in science, what we consider to be the truth, and to continue understanding, continuing looking for the learned and the unlearned. So in closing, the human enhancement towards life expansion is a project that I'm working on through Humanity Plus in part, and through H Plus Lab. I've been working on this for many years, but I'm putting it together now as soon as I finish my dissertation. I'm going to build a field for life expansion in universities. I lecture a lot in different universities, but I think it's about time it became a field, very interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary field. Developing a debate series through Humanity Plus and Accelerate. It's a network on the internet to discuss issues, not argumentative, but curious, probing our own minds and our own thoughts to look for new solutions and new ways of dealing with things. We need more papers, more articles, more essays that we can use in creating more reading material for people that are not too far out, but far enough out that we can get more of a stronger movement going with Humanity Plus and transhumanism. Multimedia works. I'm a multimedia artist, designer, and I look forward to returning back to the media very soon, and a documentary film. My background is partially in filmmaking, and I look forward to that, and I hope that you all will join me in all of these projects, not just one, but as many as possible. If not through Humanity Plus, then through me personally with H Plus Lab, and through all of our colleagues. And I thank you for being here, and thank you very much for being alive.